Jennifer, I've got to ask you the obvious question, which is this, according to all the reports in the papers, you told at least 4 or 5 people independently that you'd had an affair with Boris Johnson. Is that true? Did you have an affair with Boris Johnson? And the only significance of the question is obviously because you know there have been suggestions of impropriety on the professional side which make this relevant as a question. So just to clear this up, did you have an affair with Boris Johnson?
First of all, those people are not my friends. These are insinuations and third-party hearsay. And no, I wouldn't be going around blabbing to a bunch of people at my school. That's just completely preposterous. And secondly, would you like me to ask about your sex life? Because I thought about this a lot. When the story broke, of course, the first initial reaction is to, deny everything and to come out, making sure you're side. But then when I saw the way I'm objectified and dragged through the street, or through the press with all these kind of misquotes and misinterpretations of who I am, I can't believe that if I had looked a different way or if I was a man, I wouldn't be objectified this way.
Jennifer, I completely understand.
So it's because of that reason?
Yeah. I understand why you would react like that. And of course, questions about your private life, your personal life and your sex life are extremely awkward and may appear extremely personal.
Yeah.
The point about this situation is that we're talking about a relationship with a man who is in a position of enormous power and influence, and whether he should have declared an interest if he had a relationship with you. So it becomes much more of a matter of public interest, your own personal relationship with Boris Johnson. And it's nothing to do with the way you look or who you are or objectifying you. It's a matter of politics and influence. And that's why the question is pertinent and as awkward as it is. So we have to ask again, clearly there was chemistry, clearly there was a connection. Boris Johnson is visiting your office, which is also where you live. Did that relationship develop into an intimate relationship?
I think we're forgetting that Boris is extremely personable, and it wasn't like he singled me out. He is there to, talk to anybody who gets in his face enough, and he was always a really good friend. And I think it's quite unfortunate that it becomes that a good friend who has now been, now I'm dragged into the middle of this horrific scandal, and the answer that I'm going to give is now going to be weaponized against this man. It's really categorically no one's business what private life we had or didn't have, and categorically more important, Boris never ever gave me favoritism. Never once did I ask him for a favor. Never once did he write a letter of recommendation for me. He didn't know about my asking to go to trips. He only knew me as an extremely passionate entrepreneur of the London tech scene.
Jennifer, he did write a letter of recommendation for you when you applied to run Tech City, didn't he? You've already talked about that.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
What was it that he did?
Not at all. Fake news. No. Do you have any idea who Milo is? I mean, Milo is the most disgraceful human being, but at one point, he was an extremely talented writer, and I loved his talent. I put him on my stage at my event because he was such a fantastic speaker. But Milo came to me when I was graduating, and he thought he was social engineering me.
Explain to our viewers who Milo is, Jennifer.
Milo was a writer for The Kernel, and at the time, The Kernel was one of the only tech publications in Tech City. Milo Yiannopoulos.
But
he's now priding him.
Yeah, so you're saying that
he's priding himself on being this right-wing
commentator,
and at the time, he was just a tech journalist, really, in Tech City.
But it is
and he
untrue,
invited
Jennifer.
me to a lunch, and he asked me to apply for Tech City CEO.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a great way to meet people. Of course I'll apply. Of course I'm not qualified, but who cares? The campaign alone brought in so many introductions. So Milo was very well known for writing scathing articles. He wrote slanderous pieces on Elizabeth Varley, Eric Vanderklag, Joanna Shields. His writing was just disgusting in many ways.
Right.
So of course she told Milo what he wanted to hear.
Let's rewind it.
So when he asked me to write a letter, of course I'm going to tell him, yeah, of course I asked Boris to write me a letter. Ask Boris. I never asked him for the letter of recommendation. That letter doesn't exist. Just like my missing laptop.
So the allegation is that you wrote or you asked Boris to write a letter of recommendation for you to be recommended for this £100,000 a year job as chief executive of the technology quango Tech City. And the allegation is that you later wrote about that letter, I still have the letter of rec from Boris, ha, 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 to think that we asked him to write us a recommendation for the CEO of Tech City is just hysterical.
It is hysterical. It's hysterical that Milo bought it. It's hysterical that the Sunday Times put it in print and made it seem like a scandal.
When you say bought it,
did you lie to Milo about
Jennifer, so are you saying you lied then when you told Milo?
Like I was saying, Milo wrote really nasty pieces.
I get that, but
when Milo came to me, I want you to be Tech City.
I get it.
What was I going to do? Turn around and say, Milo, I'm not qualified. So I said, yeah, sure, write the piece. I want to be, I'll apply. And so when he said, get a letter from Boris, I'm like, of course, darling, of course I will ask Boris for a letter. Am I lying or am I just playing along?
Well,
it was a friendship. I never thought that this would be turned against me on the Sunday Times where I have to sit here and explain about a silly email.
Okay, so just to clarify, that email was untrue then that you wrote? You were lying in that email, or?
I was, of course, a silly... Boris never wrote me a letter. Never.
Okay,
so that letter... I would never have the cheek to ask him.
Okay, so that letter wouldn't exist then?
Doesn't exist.
Okay. Jennifer, before we go to the break, we're going to have a break in a minute. We're all going to recalibrate. But before we go to the break, did you ever have any intimate relationship with Boris Johnson? Because I think that, given the allegations of impropriety...
do you want me to talk about your sex life?
Not
particularly. Because I would love to ask you a few questions
well, I'm sure
about
we could
the
do
women
that.
you worked with
Jennifer,
and then married and then decided to,
Jennifer, we can do that another time. We can get into my sex life anytime you like. However, I'm not the one that's being accused of impropriety with Boris when he was Mayor of London. You know why it's relevant. And
Has
I'm
it
just
been
going to
10
ask
minutes
you,
yet? Are you falling in love with me?
I'm not going to flog you to death over it. I just want to ask you...
Are you falling in love with her?
Well, according to you, it takes 10 minutes for every man to fall for you.
Men just trip over themselves in front of me, you said, Jennifer. They fall in love with me in about 10 minutes because I know what to say. I make men trip over their private part.
And I can certainly see the appeal, Jennifer. There's no question.
Do you think
you're a very charming lady.
What a bunch of churlish little gutter snipes.
Who? Who?
Those reporters, those quotes. That is a bunch of hogwash.
Did you not say that
well, you
to a
didn't say
reporter?
that to the Daily Mirror. I used to run the Daily Mirror. You're saying the reporter made it up, or...?
The Mirror loved to embellish everything. If I could categorically itemize every single thing they have gotten wrong over the last few weeks, you wouldn't have a segment. We would be here all day.
OK.
So, yeah,
Jennifer,
that's churlish little...
OK. Jennifer, we don't want to flog this part of it because we've got to get to the more serious allegations. But just to put on the record, did you ever have any intimate relationship with Boris Johnson? Yes or no?
And because the press have made me this objectified ex-model pole dancer, I really am not going to answer that question.
So you won't deny it?
I'm sorry. I'm not going to be putting myself in a position for you to weaponize my answer.
No, I get it.
I'm being used as a pawn.
I don't want to use you. I don't want to use you as. I don't want to use you as a weapon or a pawn or anything. It's simply that obviously the answer to that question is clearly relevant to the other questions we're going to ask you about the alleged impropriety, because the nature of your relationship is actually a matter of public interest.
It's not. It's not. Categorically, Boris had nothing to do with all my other achievements. Literally, someone has written down every single thing I've done in London and found a way to drive back to Boris.
OK, well, we're going to come...
Crap.
Jennifer,
this is why I am not answering this question.
We're going to take a short break, and I respect your right. You can answer every question any way you see fit. But just for the record, you're not denying it.
I'm not answering. That's my record.
OK. We'll
so
take a
please
short...
don't misuse my words like everyone else.
No, I'm going to use your words are coming out of your own mouth on
live
national
on television. That's the benefit.
There can be no distorting them. Everyone can hear what they can hear. And obviously you could shut down all that speculation by saying simply, it's not true. I never had any intimate relationship with Boris Johnson. You could do that. You've chosen not to. I respect that. We'll take a break and we'll come back to you in a moment.